Hello, everybody. It is the American Doofus Show. Don't be a doofus. We are back for part two live, January the 6th. So, a little bit of catch up, if you will. Catching up, not ketchup as you put on fries. CYA video from Trump. Trump issued a video saying basically the election was stolen. I feel your pain. I understand why you're all angry, but we've got to go home. And it was basically a CYA video for what's to come. I don't believe it's going to be going to have the impact that he had hoped it would. He should have done something presidential. And thankfully, Joe Biden stepped up and did something sort of presidential in his statement. Now, for me today and for many, I believe it's a line in the sand. It's a line in the sand day today. Those people that had supported Trump up to this point that now see, whoa, this was not right. All of this, whoa. We've got to be able to listen to those people, in my opinion, and the ones that are still ride or die with Trump. We will probably have to marginalize those people. Now, is this the beginning of something? Or is this the beginning of the end of the Trump era? We got 14 days to figure that out. Time will tell, but it's definitely something to think about. I'd like to welcome mainstream media on board. For a long time, mainstream media, we've been talking about the fact that there is not equal treatment based upon pigment of skin. And I've heard numerous times today on mainstream media that had this been a BLM, had this been a protest of community of color, treatment would have been different. Or would treatment have been different, as they asked the question? So welcome aboard. There is a double standard. And it's nice of you to finally get on board and acknowledge that. Tomorrow, well, we will find out what happens tomorrow. During the day, if warranted, I'll be back on live. Tomorrow night, Chris, our security and military and paramilitary expert, is going to be on, along with Mike Selinker. Mike's the game designer that actually gamed out 4 different scenarios for a possible civil war. And we're going to be talking about what's to come. So all of that. Now, what we know about today thus far, Trump gave a very incendiary speech and ordered the people to the Capitol to basically make sure he remained president at all cost. And it was preceded by a even more incendiary speech from Rudy Giuliani, and before that, Donald Trump Jr. Those are not on the first part of the live, but they are available online. Now, we know a woman was shot in the chest when protesters, when pro-Trump supporters, when terrorists, when insurrectionists, when those treasonous attempting a coup, whatever definition you want to put upon them, breached the Capitol building of the United States of America today, something that I had predicted for the past few weeks. Numerous police were injured as well during all of this afternoon. Pipe bombs have been found. One pipe bomb at the Republican National Committee headquarters and the other one at the Democratic National Committee headquarters. There were chants of hang Mike Pence. Pence, Pelosi, McConnell, and other leaders of Congress have called out the National Guard, the Washington, D.C. National Guard. Also, Virginia has called out its National Guard. for the surrounding area. And also Virginia and Maryland are sending state police into the capital of the United States tonight to secure the area, or to help try to secure the area. I took a couple of hours off because I wanted to have enough energy to go another 6 hours tonight if necessary. And I hope it's not necessary, but I just have a feeling that when it gets dark, it's going to get ugly. Now we're going to start out on a feed from CNN. Again, welcome aboard mainstream media, and then we will go through live streams as we do, and hopefully some of my favorites are going to be on here tonight. There is one other thing: certifying the Electoral College, the Electoral College vote. Congress certifying that. That should take place yet tonight, as long as things stay as they are. As they are right now, the Capitol building has been secured. It is reported Capitol building is secured, and very soon, both senators and members of Congress will be moving back into their respective chambers and continuing to conduct the business of the Constitution and the people of the United States. And as we've known all along, and as we've reported, there's nothing Mike Pence can do to stop this election. All they can do is delay the actual certification. And after everything that's happened today, there's a lot of pressure on to not even do that. Just go ahead and do the will of the people as it was mandated on November 3rd. So we'll now go to the CNN feed. And as I said, we'll be doing live feeds from various sources as the night rolls along. Again, thanks for watching. It's the American Doofus Show, little channel we have here.
For their crimes against the United States today. And what's your perspective, Doug, on the behavior of the current president of the United States, who has 14 days left in office?
I think Donald Trump is ill. We've known he's an autocrat. We know that he has a dictatorial bent. We know he has no sense of history. But since the election, his ego has been so bruised that he has organized an insurrection against the U.S. federal government. He has now burned his bridge with Vice President Pence, who could have perhaps pardoned him if Pence had become president for a day or a week. And now there's talk of the 25th Amendment. People at the Department of Defense or CIA, State Department, is Trump stable for the job? It appears not from the little video that he did on the White House lawn today, saying he loves, how wonderful he loves these people that are breaking into the Capitol and turning people to flee in a sense of terror. We have 2 people that are shot. We have a curfew going, and Donald Trump will be implicated in this. This is a day of sedition. It's a word you usually use with, the John Adams era, or something in American history, and here we're witnessing it in real time. I think that you almost have Mike Pence right now is serving as the commander-in-chief of our country, while anybody in any federal bureau has to be keeping a close eye on Donald Trump, because he's acting and thinking in an irrational way.
And in order for the 25th Amendment to the Constitution, Doug, to be really go into effect, it's the vice president who has to initiate all of this. The vice president has to insist that the current president is simply unfit to be commander-in-chief.
And Vice President Pence now, if he chooses to, could start trying to organize that 25th Amendment. Our country is being held hostage right now by Donald Trump. Mitch McConnell and Speaker Pelosi can't even meet on the Capitol today. It was supposed to be the day of our great coronation to celebrate the beginning of a new presidency for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. So I think we now have to go into our Constitution kit bag and find what we can do to control Donald Trump. And certainly the 25th Amendment is there. It's an extreme measure. I never thought, Wolf, I'd ever think that could even occur in our lifetime. But we're living in very weird and strange times, as all the images of mayhem going on in Washington, D.C. shows us.
Yeah, and if you want to appreciate how, let's say, unstable the president is right now, with only 14 days to go, look at this tweet that he just posted. And let me get your quick reaction, Doug, before I move on. This is what the president of the United States just said. Hard to believe, but I'll repeat it. These are the things and events that happen when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from great patriots who have been badly and unfairly treated for so long. Go home with love and in peace. Remember this day forever. We will remember this day, Doug, forever, but it's not the way the president wants us to remember it, because this is an awful day in American history. This is not a glorious moment.
No, President Trump's right. It is a day that will live in infamy, as Franklin Roosevelt said at the time of Pearl Harbor. But it's going to be about what happens in a democratic society when you have a totalitarian as president. We've at CNN have had pundit and speaker and expert for the last 4 years trying to warn the American people about who this man was. And here today, we watched his behavior. He incited this rally and riot, and he will pay a very high cost in history and hopefully in the law, law also.
And he's praising these rioters. Well, let's go to Pamela Brown. She's getting more information. Pamela, the curfew went into effect, 22 minutes or so, 12 minutes or so ago. But give us a little bit more information that you learned.
Well, we've just learned that what we saw today, there has been a death. I just got off the phone with the spokesperson for NPD, who tells me that the adult woman who we reported was in critical condition earlier today, she has now been pronounced dead. She was pronounced dead at the hospital, and now I'm told that DC police will take the lead in investigating this. We don't have any information about the circumstances of this or the identification of this woman, but there is video circulating that we are not showing right now, a disturbing video of the woman being treated inside, apparently inside the Capitol building today on the Capitol ground. She is being treated there. She was transported to the hospital, and she has been pronounced dead. Well, there have been multiple injuries amid the mayhem today from not only the rioters, but also police officers there who have been injured. Some have been taken to the hospital. We know of at least one. But this is the first death that we know of from what we have seen unfold there today, Wolf.
So a deadly day in addition to everything else. Alex Marquardt, we see these individuals who are still marching. They're still moving around. There's a curfew supposedly in effect here in the nation's capital. They don't seem to care.
No, they don't, Wolf. We have to say that the number of Trump supporters of rioters has dramatically decreased, but there's still a very strong contingent. They are being pushed back forcefully, aggressively, but not violently by members of the Metropolitan Police Department. As we've been saying, this long line of MPD officers, some in riot gear, some not, have been slowly and methodically pushing them away from the western side of the Capitol, which is where much of this riot started this afternoon. This incursion into the Capitol building started this afternoon. So we have seen over the course of the past hour or so, as we built towards this curfew that, as you mentioned, has now been in effect for about 15 minutes, we have seen them slowly and methodically pushing people away. One interesting thing, Wolf, we just saw about a group of around 24 FBI agents heading towards the Capitol. That is one body, one law enforcement body that we had not seen earlier today. So far, it was mainly limited to different other federal law enforcement agencies as well as local law enforcement agencies. But what you're looking at now, Wolf, are the remnants of these rioters, at least from this side of the Capitol. I don't have visibility on what's happening on other sides of the Capitol, who continue to chant and shout obscenities at law enforcement. They've been calling them traitors. They've been calling them sellouts, and they've been very, very angry. So there has been a large number of rioters have left, but there is still a strong presence. And I want to say something quickly about the symbolism. Of course, there are a lot of American flags out here, but I would say that those flags are outnumbered by Trump flags, and that really does give you a sense of where I believe the allegiance lies of so many of these rioters. Wolf?
Yeah, it's a really, really dangerous situation that's unfolding, and I suspect in the days to come, 14 days until the inauguration, it's going to become even more tense here in the nation's capital. Adoni is still with us. He's in the midst of one of the crowds that's still there. They're refusing to obey this 6 p.m. curfew. What's the latest there, Adoni?
Hey, Wolf, yeah, we have been moved back about 100 feet beyond where the Trump supporters, members of this mob, broke through the barrier. That's where the police moved them back to 6 p.m. when the curfew came in place. And a few minutes after 6 p.m., they began pushing the crowd back. The crowd did cooperate. It was peaceful, but as we were moving, you could hear instigators, people telling members of this crowd here to saying, make the police move you, make them move you, to almost trying to provoke some form of confrontation here. The crowd is thinning out a little bit, and behind me we can see some people who are taking down barriers and moving barriers around. There seems to be some commotion. It is quite a tense scene here, Wolf. The police seem more police are actually seem to be coming down the steps of the Capitol that I can see. So it's possible that these people who are now in breach of the 6 p.m. Washington D.C. curfew will be moved further away from the Capitol, and we may see just sorry, 1 second. Yeah, we do see more people now moving in behind this police line, so we may be moved here in the next few minutes. Wolf?
People moving in closer to the police that are refusing to move away. Is that what you're saying, Donnie?
They should be doing something called kettling if
Yeah, we see we're
standard operation procedure is followed, and if I'm not mistaken.
But yeah, as you can see, there are some Trump supporters here who are trying to get in the police's face. Another thing, Wolf, is there's a lot of guys who are playing soldier here. They're dressed up in khakis, they're dressed up in camouflage and armor, but they don't serve their country. They're here, they think, I guess, that it's all a game. And that's the thing, Wolf, you know, all the people here, the folks that I've been speaking to here, they all just believe in this conspiracy theory taking over a not insignificant part of the American population. And we're being moved here a little bit again, Wolf. I think we should just move down the street here. You can see some police with shields been brought in here. And there's a sense, I think, in the next few moments that the police will try to push these Trump supporters further away from the Capitol. And of course, they've been here all day. They've been here from a few minutes after Trump finished speaking. That speech, which was, again, full of lies and conspiracy theories. And when those supporters reached the Capitol and breached through those barriers. So this is finally clearing the mob out after many hours. Well,
are these people that you're speaking to over there? You've done excellent reporting over these past many months on some of these fringe conspiracy groups, QAnon among others, in various parts of the country. Are you seeing those kinds of people where you are right now, Tony?
You know, well, what we've learned from traveling the country over the past few months, speaking to many Trump supporters, is that so many people who support this president buy into these conspiracy theories. And although right now I can't see anybody with a sort of QAnon sticker or flag, what I have found, and it's unfortunate that, you know, as you begin talking with many of these folks, that is, they begin echoing these lines from QAnon, these conspiracy theories that get bopped around in the right-wing media circles online, on Trump media networks, alternative networks. Some folks that I've spoken to here today say they no longer watch Fox News because Fox News called the election for Biden. So that is sort of how far down a sort of rabbit hole of misinformation and mistruths that many of these people have gone down. And we are moving now. The police, as you can see there, are beginning windshields to gently and slowly try and move this line further away from the Capitol. And as you can see, these Trump supporters taking baby steps. They're going nowhere in a hurry, even though we're now well beyond the 6 p.m. curfew, Wolf, and we're moving down a little bit from the line.
I just want you to be very, very careful over there, Joni, because this looks like potentially it could get even more ugly and dangerous in the coming minutes as we see the police beginning to move in. Are the police telling these rioters over there? Do they have a bullhorn? Are they saying you must be off the streets? There is a curfew in effect. You will be arrested if you refuse to obey the law. Supposedly, that these are individuals who claim they support law and order. Are they hearing these instructions from the police?
So the police, not at least from our position here, we haven't heard those sort of announcements come out from police, but there has been a lot more movement in the build-up and after that 6 p.m. curfew hour. I spoke to some folks here asking them, did they care that they were breaking this curfew? And some folks asked me sort of sarcastically, oh, what time is it? Oh, should I get out of here? People didn't seem too bothered by this. These, of course, the folks, many of these folks, some of them are actually holding pro-police flags and things like that while they create disruption here in the Capitol for the police. So there is no end to the irony, which is very often the case when talking to a lot of these folks. I mean, the people here today, some of these folks who caused the destruction, who drove through these barricades, they told me earlier they view themselves as patriots. They view any person who who lives in the real world and sees that Joe Biden as president-elect of the United States, they view them as the traitors. So folks are so far down these rabbit holes of misinformation as we see the police are now moving forward here just a bit again, Wolf. And folks, as we've seen all along here, we haven't seen so much the Trump supporters pushing back on the police line, but just taking those baby steps. And of course, past curfew here, Wolf.
Yeah, the president just moments ago in that tweet called them great patriots. Really a sick situation unfolding. Alex Marquardt, where are you?
We're a little bit not too far away from Tony O'Sullivan and what he is seeing as well. And what you're really getting a sense of right now, Wolf, so we're 23 minutes after the curfew, is a sense of significantly dwindled enthusiasm. These are not the fired up Trump supporters, not the fired up rioters who we saw protesting for much of the afternoon. This is much more muted. They are now being pushed westwards away from the Capitol towards the Washington Monument. The police line is encircling that group of protesters in their reflective vests with their helmets on, batons at the ready, pushing what has been an aggressive crowd, but not a violent crowd, at least for the past hour or so. We're not necessarily seeing violent altercations taking place as the police push them back. In the time that we've been back over here on this side of the Capitol, and certainly since the curfew has gone into place, we have not seen the police having to use things like pepper spray, tear gas, some of those pepper balls that we have seen in previous protests here in the nation's capital over the past year. But you are very much seeing this large crowd, and it still is a large crowd. And no matter how much it has dwindled, there are still significant numbers out here of Trump supporters being pushed away from the Capitol. I spoke to what appeared to be a senior police officer as they were asking us to move as well. He said the intention was very much to clear the area, to make the Capitol a safe area after an incredible, surreal afternoon of violence. We have been using that word over and over again, surreal, because it simply is. To watch Americans breaking in to the Capitol building, scaling the walls of Congress has just been absolutely extraordinary to witness. What you're looking at now, Wolf, I'm gonna ask my cameraman Ronnie to point over to the right. That line of police that we were talking about, they now have riot shields, tall plastic, clear riot shields that will help them in their efforts now to push back these protesters, these rioters. As you know all too well, Wolf, things can change very quickly when darkness falls. It is now dark out here. There is now a curfew. I would imagine that many of these people out here know that there is a curfew and are still resisting going home. So this is, if you will, a more hardcore element that has yet to melt away. But given the sheer magnitude of law enforcement out here, I would imagine that they will be rather effective in getting these rioters to leave this area. As we speak, Wolf, you can see them moving forward and pushing them away, and we're going to have to move out of the way very soon as well, Wolf.
Yeah, this curfew has gone into effect almost a half an hour, but these rioters, they have no intention, apparently, at least not now, of honoring the law and agreeing to leave. You know, Manu Raja, this information that we just got, that a woman who was shot inside the U.S. Capitol during the riots earlier today was now pronounced dead at a local D.C. hospital. You're there, you're inside the Capitol. Give us the latest on what's going on.
Well, if I can tell you that senior law enforcement officials in the Capitol, along with some key officials who deal with how the Senate floor operates, just had a meeting, and they walked into a meeting with a larger group of senators, presumably to brief them about what the plans are going to be tonight. And I can tell you that leaders on both sides of the aisle are pushing to continue with what they try to do. These rioters trespassed and broke into the Capitol is to continue the electoral vote certification process. The goal is to get that done tonight. Also, the goal among Republicans in particular is to persuade those Republican objectors, the ones who have been dragging out this process, inevitable to Joe Biden to be president. They try to urge those objectors throughout their plans to drag out the proceedings. And right now, behind the scenes, some of those key senators are meeting. That's with Senators Josh Hawley, Ted Cruz, Marsha Blackburn, Mike Braun, among others. They're having a private meeting to discuss their strategy. No word yet about whether they will continue to push ahead with their objections, but that's going to be a big question going forward. Also, outrage building among a lot of Republican senators and Democratic senators about what just transpired. A very, very strongly worded statement just came out from Mitt Romney, the 2012 Republican presidential nominee, Utah Republican senator, saying that he was going to deliver this speech on the floor of the Senate today to say that they're gathering to deal with the selfish man's injured pride. He is deliberately misled and informed his supporters. And he goes on to say that happened here today was an insurrection incited by the President of the United States. Those who continue to support his dangerous gambit by objection to the results of a legitimate democratic election will forever be seen as being complicit in an unprecedented attack against our democracy. They will be remembered for their role in this shameful episode in American history. That will be their legacy. Very, very strong words from the Republican presidential nominee from 9 years, from 2012, 9 years ago. And it just shows you the raw emotions that a lot of members feeling on both sides of the aisle, trying to appeal to some of these Republicans who have been objecting to drop their objections, move forward quickly, show some unity after what we've all witnessed here on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, and the acting Attorney General of the United States, Jeffrey Rosen, just issued a statement saying the violence at our nation's Capitol building is an intolerable attack on a fundamental institution of our democracy. The words continue to flow right now, Dana, but I don't know what's going to happen in the coming hours. Will these Republicans who want to try to block the democratically held election here in the United States, whether Steve Scalise or Kevin McCarthy or Ted Cruz or Josh Hawley, will they now recognize they were going to lose anyhow, just get it over with and move on?
It is the question we're waiting to know the answer to, Wolf. In the meantime, we are getting some dramatic pictures of what happened in the moments, the minutes, when these rioters came to the outside of the House chamber. And on the phone is Congressman Jason Crow of Colorado. And Congressman, we have a photo that's on CNN.com, and we're going to put up right now, that shows you reaching out on the floor of the House chamber, reaching out to Congresswoman Susan Wild. And you are, there you go, and you are, looks like you're trying to comfort her. Take us in that moment. What was going on?
Yeah, that was a very, very difficult time. I haven't been in a situation like that since, frankly, I've been in Iraq and Afghanistan as an Army Ranger. We were actually trapped in the House chamber at that time. The mob had descended and broke through the security cordon of the Capitol. They had already evacuated the leadership and the members who were on the floor. Those of us who were up in the gallery watching the debate had been trapped because the mob closed off the stairwells and had surrounded the chamber. So the police were able to get us out. So they actually closed and locked the doors and started to take furniture and barricade the doors and the windows as furniture as the mob tried to ram them down and breaking through the windows. The police had their guns out and were prepared to defend us on the floor. But we were told to lay down. You know, my friend Susan, of course, a dear friend, wanted to make sure that we were comforting each other.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now that I look at it, it makes sense. You were up, sort of looking down on the House floor in the gallery. You mentioned you were a U.S. Army Ranger. You did 3 tours of duty in Iraq and Afghanistan. You were an 82nd Airborne Platoon Leader. You were awarded the Bronze Star. How did that experience play into the moment that we're seeing now and what you just described in the beacon of, and the home of democracy, the U.S. Capitol, as an elected member of Congress?
Well, when I was an Army Ranger, I was trained to fight. And I joined because I love America, I love our country, and I've always wanted to defend her. And you know, I went abroad and served 3 combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan to do that. I never thought that I'd have to be in a situation of having to fight. Certainly as a member of Congress, the United States Capitol and the House for the year 2021. It's surreal, and to be honest with you, I'm still processing that experience and coming to terms with it. But you know, we have some very serious questions that we need to answer here in the days ahead about what this means and what we have to do to respond to it.
And as we were speaking, Speaker Pelosi announced that the process is going to resume tonight. Do you know anything about what the plans are and how quickly that is going to begin?
Well, I think it's important that we do resume it tonight. It's our understanding that they are clearing, or maybe they've already cleared the Capitol at this point. We have to go back as soon as we can. And we need to complete this work, certify this election, and move our country forward. We will not be intimidated. We will not be browbeat. We will keep up doing our work. It's the people's work. And the vast, vast majority of Americans are good, decent, hardworking people. Their voice will be heard. Their votes will be counted. And they will either be counted tonight or they will be counted tomorrow. But we will get this work done.
Congressman Jason Crow, thank you so much for calling in, and thank you for everything that you've done there. And you're absolutely right. There are so many questions that I know you're asking. Everybody's asking about how this happened, these pictures. That's one of them. Lots of other pictures of these rioters sitting at desks they should never be sitting at on the House floor, on the Senate floor. Thank you so much. Jake, I know you have a lot of relationships with members of Congress who were in the military, and they come to Congress as, you know, at the next step in their service to this country, and you know, just a different form of service. And you don't expect that this would happen in the United States Capitol as an elected official, that they have to call on that service on the battlefield to help protect the people around them.
Yeah, and we talked to Congressman Mike Gallagher of Wisconsin and Congressman Kinzinger of Illinois, both Republicans, both combat veterans from Iraq, and both of them talking about how they haven't seen any images like what we saw today since they were in Iraq. We also need to acknowledge, look, members of veterans run the gamut politically, and for every Crow and Gallagher and Kinzinger, you also have a Crenshaw or a Mast, combat veterans who served honorably, who are part of this big lie, who are objecting to a free and fair election. So I wish I could say there was some sort of through line on all the combat veterans, but no, some of them are are part of this monstrosity. People who have been fed lies by the president and his supporters. And again, as we've talked about many times, I don't know if the president believes it, or he doesn't understand what happened, or there's some sort of psychological issue I'm not capable of diagnosing. But whatever it is, he keeps lying, and you see the domestic terrorism that results, which is exactly what this is. Domestic terrorism by Trump supporters.
And as all of this is happening, you're hearing almost parallel conversations unfolding in Washington and elsewhere among elected officials. You have Democrats talking openly about, even at this late stage with 14 days left, bringing articles of impeachment against this president. Top Democrats, not lower level rank and file members, but people in senior leadership talking about that. And you also have Republicans, several of them, now talking about whether the 25th Amendment should be invoked. The Vermont Governor, Bill Scott, just a few minutes ago, tweeted that President Trump should resign or be removed from office by his cabinet or by Congress. He is a Republican, an anti-Trump Republican, but a Republican nonetheless. And that is a very significant statement. This is a president who only has days left, but clearly people in positions of power and positions of government in this country are more alarmed now than they have been in the past. And the reality is we very well could be facing the darkest 14 days of this presidency yet. We just have a few weeks left, but this is a president who's becoming increasingly desperate. And you're hearing from his staffers. Mike Pompeo has tweeted condemning the violence. The National Security Advisor, Robert O'Brien, tweeting condemning the violence, also tweeting in support of what Mike Pence did in carrying out parts of his duties today. It suggests that people around the president, even the ones who are still working for him, want to distance themselves from what he is doing today, which is inciting this violence. In this last tweet, encouraging this violence, patting his supporters on the back for this violence. So there's something happening here. What it will amount to is really unclear, and of course, time is running short.
Yeah, and I mean, those are all really excellent points. And look, I mean, we have the former chief of staff of the Department of Education under Trump, Josh Venable. He posted on Facebook, if the cabinet is not right now preparing to invoke the provisions of the 25th Amendment to remove Trump from office, it is a complete dereliction of their duty and a betrayal of their constitutional oath of office, but I won't hold my breath. That is the former chief of staff to Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos. He's sending a message to her, you need to be invoking the 25th Amendment. And I posted that on Twitter, and Barbara Comstock, former Republican congresswoman from Northern Virginia, former Department of Justice official under George W. Bush, agreed. There is a real movement by conservatives, we shouldn't overstate the case, most of them are still pretty cowardly, to just acknowledge that, like, oh my God, I don't know if the United States is going to be able to survive 2 more weeks of this guy.
I spoke to a very close ally of President Trump earlier today after he put out that video. And this ally called it a piece of, piece of shit, literally called it that. Was so angry at that because he was completely and totally, energizing. Even though he was saying go home, he was continuing to energize and repeat all of the lies that led to this situation. And this person said, you know what? Maybe we can at least, the very least, convince him to go to Joe Biden's inauguration. Maybe that can save him from being the worst president of the United States.
No,
Don't hold your breath.
Well, I don't know. The historians will weigh in on that, but we should point out that the curfew in Washington, D.C., which was imposed by Mayor Bowser of Washington, D.C., the curfew was imposed, it started at 6 o'clock. At 6:40, and you still see lots of people in violation of the curfew. Let's go out to Brian Todd, who is among them reporting. Journalists are exempted from this. But it really is, Brian, pretty remarkable. I don't see a lot of action against people violating the curfew.
No. That's right, Jake. We're going to walk you walk you down toward this crowd a little bit, Eddie. Let's go down the hill a little bit. Okay. Some of these people are trying to harass us a little bit as we go down toward the crowd. These are people who were pushed way back in the perimeter from the Capitol toward the reflecting pool by some of the riot police. And you're right, a lot of these people probably are at risk of possibly being arrested at this point. And what you have over here to the left is a long line of.
It sounds like you're in a hairy situation there. So we're gonna let you escape. People who believe in the First Amendment only for their point of view is always in an interesting situation. Manu Raju is also reporting from the Capitol for us. Manu?
Yes, Senator Chuck Schumer, the Democratic leader, soon to be Senate Majority Leader, walking into a meeting with senators and other key staff, and we asked him, what is next year in the electoral vote certification? He said, 8 o'clock, meaning 8 o'clock Eastern is when they expect the Senate to reconvene to begin to continue with the process that was interrupted by the rioters who trespassed this Capitol.
I honestly never thought this would be the case, that CNN would be doing such a good job that I could leave it on CNN, no commercials. And they've been reporting fairly. It's I never thought I would see it. I thank all of you for watching with me.
House and Senate leaders plan to move ahead. Nancy Pelosi sent a letter to all House members saying they plan to move forward tonight. More details are about to come out on that as well. So expect this to reconvene tonight. It could be a long night, maybe it'll be a short night and a show of unity. But nevertheless, at least by 8 o'clock, Jake, we should expect these proceedings to continue.
All right, Manu Raju, and we should know President Trump has not had one word of criticism, not one word, for any of the activities by these Trump
no, it's not over. We're going to stay with it.
Not even for the
and I've been monitoring some live streams, and if anything does come up on one of the lives, we will break into that. But again, man,
what is going on inside that building? I know there's a lot of ride or die folks there, but even they must be shocked.
Oh man, now he's using ride or die.
I think they are, and I think the president is feeling very isolated right now because he has been hearing all day from staffers who said he needed to put out a more forceful statement. Of course, the president then put out that video and then later tweeted defending what we saw happen on Capitol Hill today. His national security advisor, Robert O'Brien, who is incredibly closely aligned with the president and typically is a pretty fierce defender of his, is tweeting that he is in agreement with the vice president and the actions he took today, saying it took courage to do that, of course, as the president has been criticizing him and complaining about him all afternoon and focusing more on what Pence did than what's been happening with his supporters on Capitol Hill. And right now, the president is still in the West Wing, we are told. And Jake, I'm learning that the president does not want his Republican allies to drop their efforts to challenge Biden's win, to object to his win, what we're expecting to play out for several hours on the Senate floor today before, of course, the pro-Trump mob breached the building. And the president does not want them to stop. And there's been some discussion, our colleagues reported, among Republican senators about abandoning those efforts. But I am told the president wants them to keep fighting. He wants them to keep going and does not want them to drop those efforts, even though, despite what the president did earlier today, holding that rally, of course, resulted in what we saw this afternoon on Capitol Hill.
All right, Caitlin Collins, thanks so much. And again, President Trump has spent so much of his presidency accusing his critics of what he is, what he has done. And I would just like to remind our viewers that President Trump now for years has referred to journalists as the enemy of the American people. Ask yourself, who's the enemy of the American people right now? It pretty clearly seems to be President Trump, who is encouraging a mob, an insurrection to storm the Capitol, threatening Democrats and Republicans alike. Somebody left a pipe bomb outside the Republican National Committee headquarters today. President Trump has not had one discouraging word to say about any of this. And in many ways, we should not be surprised. This is somebody who had a supporter, Caesar Sayoc, who mailed pipe bombs to Democrats and to media organizations. This is somebody who both sides in terms of the white supremacist march in Charlottesville. Jim Acosta also covers the Trump administration, the Trump White House for us. And Jim, I think There are a lot of calls right now from Republicans, including a former Republican congresswoman, for the cabinet to meet and invoke the 25th Amendment.
Yeah, that's right, Jake. And I think that talk is only going to continue. The head of the National Association of Manufacturers has also put out a statement suggesting that Vice President Mike Pence somehow put together an effort to remove the president from office using the 25th Amendment. I will tell you, Jake, I talked to a source, a GOP source close to the president, who speaks with him regularly, and I take no pleasure in reporting this, but this source tells me that he believes the president is out of his mind. The quote used by this source is, "He is out of his mind." And the source said the president is so traumatized by his loss in the election. It is all he can talk about. It is all he can think about. It's all consuming for him. And that, in this source's opinion, he is out of his mind. Now, I talked to a separate source close to the White House, an advisor to the president, when I asked this advisor about the prospect of invoking the 25th Amendment and forcing the president from power, with his cabinet coming together and saying he's no longer fit to be president of the United States. This advisor said because the president has installed so many lackeys on that cabinet, of course, the president always has loyalists on his cabinet, but there are lackeys on this cabinet, including acting secretaries who've been installed recently, that it's just unlikely. The probability of that happening is just not going to happen. And in the words of this advisor, I just don't think the cabinet is going to invoke the 25th Amendment. But it is interesting, Jake, according to this advisor, aides and allies of the president have been having these kinds of conversations about whether or not the 25th Amendment's time has come when it comes to Donald Trump. But you don't want to get into that kind of conversation when talking about the president of the United States. You don't take pleasure in that as a reporter, using that kind of language. But when a source close to the president, and this is a source who has known the president a long time, talks to him a lot, says he's out of his mind, I think that is serious, Jake.
Well, and a good WTF is the fact that the president is inspiring his supporters to commit acts of domestic terrorism against the U.S. Capitol, against Republicans and Democrats alike. And of course, this is not just shameful behavior by President Trump. It is.
I was just about to turn the feed to another feed, and I'm so glad I saved it for that.
And let's go to Clarissa Ward right now, who is in London. Clarissa, what is the reaction from world leaders to this? Let's start with American allies. What are they saying?
Well, I think there's a mixture of shock, disbelief, horror. We are hearing very strong words coming from world leaders like Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister here in the United Kingdom. He said, disgraceful scenes in the U.S. Congress. The United States stands for democracy around the world, and it is now vital that there should be a peaceful and orderly transfer of power. That sentiment also echoed by the Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, who said, Canadians are deeply disturbed and saddened by the attack on democracy in the United States, our closest ally and neighbors. Violence will never succeed in overruling the will of the people. Democracy in the U.S. must.
There we go. Thank you, CNN, for some incredible reporting. I've got to give credit where credit's due. We've got an active live. Okay, well, I'm not crazy about this. I'm sure you're not either. Jeez. Sorry about this. Obviously, this is not my live stream. Let me find something else real quick. Come on. I'm trying. I can't see your comments. I'm back here, but I know you're not any happier about what's going on the screen than I am, so we will get it fixed here.
Do we know what the plan is for 7?
Oh, wait a minute. Maybe we'll get some information. Oh, that's broadcasters. Come on. Well, I apologize. My phone is going slow. I'm going back to CNN until I can find a Bible site. Actually, let's see what Fox is saying, shall we? Just for a few moments. Here we go to Fox News. This will be a first, I believe.
John, info? Couple things, Brad. First of all, the tweet that I read you earlier in the program was deleted by the president along with that video that he tweeted out to try to diffuse the situation on Capitol Hill. Unclear at this point why those two things were deleted.
Oh, wow.
Though they did fall under criticism for being somewhat insensitive. In the first tweet, or at least the tweeted video, the president again talked about the election being stolen, as he did in the written tweet. It's possible he got a little bit of blowback on that. The other thing is over who called out the National Guard. The New York Times reported that it was Vice President Mike Pence, not the president, who called out the Guard. I was told just a few minutes ago by Chris Miller, the acting Defense Secretary's Chief of Staff, Kash Patel, that it was in fact the president who authorized the deployment of the National Guard, that he and Miller have been talking for a couple of days about contingency plans for the march, making sure that buildings in the federal buildings here in Washington, D.C., as well as citizens, were protected. Mayor Muriel Bowser, a couple of days ago, asked for 340 National Guard. They were authorized right away and deployed. And it wasn't until, I'm told by Patel, until after the siege began at the Capitol building that she put out the call for the National Guard, the rest of the National Guard contingent, to be brought in. And that was immediately authorized by the president through his Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows. So potentially that goes some distance to clearing that, right?
You know, the National Security Advisor, Robert O'Brien, tweeting out that he had spoken with Vice President Pence. He's a generally fine and decent man. He exhibited courage today, as he did at the Capitol on 9/11. As a congressman, I'm proud to serve with him. Kind of backing up Pence's moves today. Yeah, and I got to tell you, after sort of unswerving loyalty to the president over the past 4 years, even in some very difficult circumstances that have been much publicized, it was a remarkable break between the vice president and the president. The vice president's got 16 more days in office. Potentially, he's looking beyond that. He did say, his office did say that he would conduct the proceedings on the Capitol, at the Capitol, with the fidelity to the law and the Constitution. And maybe he just saw what the president was saying about what authority the vice president didn't have as a bridge too far. And the vice president said, look, I'm going to clear this up, and sent that letter to the members of Congress to say, I do not have the authority to act unilaterally here. He didn't say despite what the president says, but that's basically what the net effect of it was. But after this long being in lockstep with the president, to see that break today really was quite extraordinary and something we haven't seen before. Right? John, last thing here. There are a lot of people who say, listen, the president has a lot of supporters. After today, you have people who are always his critics saying that he's leading an insurrection, that the vice president should lead the 25th Amendment and take him out before the 2 weeks before the inauguration. Is there any sense of a worry about today yet, about his future because of today, affecting this president, how he dismounts from his office? And I think we saw that with the vice president, with what Mitch McConnell said as well. It's quite possible that President Trump will find the White House a fairly lonely place to be politically for the next 16 days. All right, John, thank you very much. Finally, tonight, we'll take a look back at the sights and sounds of a historic day in Washington.
Without objection, the House is going to go back into recess.
Security here at the United States Capitol has failed.
Take that house! Take it down! Take it down!
We're a strong country, resilient country. We can get through this. Thanks for inviting us into your home tonight. That's it for this special report. Fair, balanced, and still unafraid. The story, hosted by Martha McCallum, starts right now. Martha, we didn't talk about the South Carolina races and the turning over of the Senate.
Exactly. You gotta tell me what I'm here for. No, I'm asking.
We are on woke.net,
Why are you here?
multiple feeds, and I'm going to try to get one of the feeds up.
We're here to talk to you. Watch and observe. I agree. Just jumping off first. I agree. Don't take me, bro. You can do whatever you want. This is America. At least for the next 6 hours. Hey, guess what? Not angry at each other. We're not gonna fight each other. We're gonna fight you. We're gonna fight everybody in the top 1%. We are coming for you. We're gonna take all of you. We're gonna remove you from office. We're gonna do recall of all recalls, not just in one state, not just in one country, but across the world. We will hunt you down. That's right. You seem to have a following of support. So for those who say articulate, passionate, to try to make these changes from the inside and maybe run for office, that would be a better way to achieve your objectives. Those who have done it. There was a gentleman who wrote a book called Blood Sport. And he was asked by Hillary Clinton to write a book. He's an accountant. And he looked into what happens at old folks' homes and all the money that's stolen from old people, retirement homes. And he said he went in there and he learned there's no way retirement homes they're supposed to go to other countries in Puerto Rico. And our politicians are asleep at the wheel. They're taking their life. We will not yield. We will not step down. You can kill one of us. You can kill 1,000 of us. You can kill 1 million of us. We will keep rising back. We will keep repopulating. We will not take your vaccine. We will not take your drugs. We will not take your lives about the American people. We will fight as one. We don't care what party you're in. We will come for you. We will take you out of office by democratic processes. Your hand around his neck. What's he being arrested for, Lieutenant? Great content right here.
Come on, you guys. I was hoping he was blocking traffic, and I noticed it.
Okay.
I fucking know it. He was blocking traffic for no reason, so yeah, you deserve to get arrested. I was embarrassed to have you talking to me. You're blocking traffic for no reason.
Hey, thanks for saying that, people.
I said I'm confident.
We are in a police state. We are being arrested.
Public intoxication for one.
You deserve to get arrested right now, Chris.
This is incredibly surreal. Whoa. Wow. I don't know if my phone's hot or what the deal is, but everything just shut down. Try to get things back up here as quick as possible. Here we go. We're watching live from Washington, D.C., the aftermath of Trump supporters storming the Capitol and breaching the Capitol building, causing destruction. One person killed, numerous arrests, police injured. And a curfew was in place at 6 p.m. It's currently 7:11 and Eastern Standard Time. And you have to wonder how much more patience law enforcement is going to have, as we have seen them lose their patience in other situations previously in the past year, 2020 especially. But we'll keep an eye on it. 8 p.m. Congress is supposed to reconvene and certify the Electoral College results of the election, officially making Joe Biden president. We've heard several things on here. We've heard Republicans saying that the president of the United States has lost his mind. You've heard it also said that there are too many weak Republicans to actually do anything about it. He surrounded himself with sycophants, and other than Mike Pence, nobody has the courage to vote him out, or to have him removed, I should say, not vote him out. I had always said I thought he would resign rather than ever admit he lost the election, and Pence would become president for a couple of days and pardon Trump and everyone around him. That's still a possibility. I also said Congress was going to get stormed today and be held hostage, and I was called a doofus. Don't be a doofus. Come on, dude. There we go. We'll continue monitoring, see what happens. I'm going to pop into the comments real quick for while there doesn't appear to be much going on. Martial law or civil war are the choices. In Moral River, we're going to be talking about that tomorrow night. Will Trump or Rudy be held accountable? That remains to be seen. I would imagine there will be a call for accountability. Yeah, I've been quiet. Actually, CNN was doing such a good job, I didn't really have anything to refute or say. And even Fox News was kind of telling the truth. So yeah, it's so odd. It's odd. Totally unexpected. I never thought there would be such a situation where Fox, CNN, and myself all seem to have similar opinions. Hey, you're welcome. It's my pleasure to bring it. I thank all of you for watching with me. Get my phone figured out here and we get some more live streams up. Hopefully nothing more happens. But for some strange reason, I just think that we haven't seen anybody with guns. And supposedly there are militia all around the Capitol. And I would think if they were going to move, it might be tonight, especially with Congress getting ready to reconvene in 45 minutes. So I hope that's not the case. I have no information that is the case. I did have information, as I pointed out, that the Capitol was going to get stormed and Congress was going to be held hostage. And they attempted to do just that. They did storm the Capitol. Congress got away. Come on, pop back up here because I don't want to go back to the back of the room and switch feeds. But it looks like I may have to. So a recap, absolutely. The day began with what is a parliamentarian situation normally, and that is certifying the Electoral College votes from each state's individual Electoral College. Those voters in the Electoral College are determined by the popular vote of each state in the country. Now, once those votes are certified, we have a new president, and basically the whole concept of the day was to delay those votes. Now, the day began with a speech from Donald Trump Jr., then Rudy Giuliani, each one a little more aggressive, if you will. Giuliani saying we have to fight. And then finally, the president of the United States, the 45th president and the outgoing president, spoke and basically said he was going to march with all of his people to the Capitol and demand that the the election be given back to them, having been stolen from them. He, of course, did not march with any of them. He went back to the White House, and they did march to the Capitol where others were already present. The Capitol building was stormed by protesters, by rioters, by treasonous thugs, whatever name you want to choose, because I've heard them all. Trump supporters stormed the Capitol building and basically stopped the process of certifying the Electoral College vote for a brief time. In that process, there was destruction of property. A woman was shot in the chest and has subsequently died. Numerous police have been injured. A pipe bomb was found at the Republican National Headquarters and one at the Democratic National Headquarters. There were chants of hang Mike Pence, Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, everyone but the President of the United States called out the Washington, D.C. National Guard. And at 8 p.m., Congress is going to reconvene after the building was breached. Now that it has been secured and they've secured the entirety of Capitol Hill, as we can see from the footage, they're going to reconvene at 8 o'clock. And it's just a matter of, are they going to drag it out, or are they going to expedite this basic parliamentary process? And they can object to every state. They can object and talk for up to 2 hours on every state that there's an objection on. So potentially this could be a 10, 12-hour process if the Republicans, if the pro-Trump, the 10 pro-Trump senators remaining decide to do the will of the president. And that's basically where we are at. It is 7:19 now. A curfew was put in place at 6 p.m. from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. in Washington, D.C. These people are in violation of curfew, and that does not seem to be that. I think that is in place more so of a if things start to get heated, they can arrest anybody and everybody kind of situation, which they employ quite frequently, which police and law enforcement employ quite frequently, and have employed quite frequently over the summer, especially in places like Louisville, Kentucky. So I think that kind of catches us up. Them old buzzers will be ready for bed by 8 o'clock. Yes, a lot of them will want to just get this day over with. And again, we haven't seen armed fighting for Trump, and I hope we don't. But that still is a fear of mine that that Oath Keepers, 3%ers, Proud Boys, they come back and decide they're going to take the Capitol again and stop this certification once again. And the fact that the President of the United States that currently sits in the White House has not been more forceful in saying enough is enough, it is over. Actually, he put out a video that he deleted. He put out a tweet that he deleted. And maybe the man is out of his mind. I've said that I believe he's got some mental or emotional problems, and I believe they are surfacing for the world to see. Now it's just a matter of are people going to continue to follow him, or are people going to understand the mistake in making that choice, the mistake in losing friends, family, possibly employment, and possibly freedom if it gets to the point where there actually is a civil war. It's almost too much to think about. So there's a brief recap of what's going on. Let me see if I can get a more reliable feed up here. I don't like going to mainstream media normally, but mainstream media has been doing a pretty good job this evening. Don't confuse courage with privilege. Brat looks courageous till you pull their skirt up. Good point. Don't confuse courage with privilege. A lot of what I saw in the people that went in and breached the Capitol was they felt like they deserved to be there. They had the privilege to break the law without reciprocity, and that's a problem with our country. And that's going to be hard to get people to put a mirror up in front of their faces and see how their individual attitudes, thoughts, and actions are really detrimental to the country as a whole and to themselves as individuals. But that's just my opinion and something to think about.
Needless to say, this is the president's preferred mode of communication, and in fact, was the venue in which he released.
I assume there's a new Twitter.
In which he said that protesters should go home, but also continued to allege that the election was fraudulent and stolen, which of course it was not.
That's right, Savannah. This is yet another extraordinary development in a day that has been filled with so many. Twitter deciding to lock the account of the President of the United States.
Whoa!
Tweeted twice today, as you rightfully point out. Both tweets reiterated those false claims of widespread voter fraud. He also put out a video that was flagged by Twitter earlier in the day, in which he echoed similar comments but did urge his supporters to be peaceful. I have to tell you that what we have seen here behind the scenes, based on my conversations with a number of top officials, is an urgent effort to try to get the president to come out and publicly to say something that is more forceful than that, both from current and former officials. Savannah, let me just read you a few. Alyssa Farah, who tweeted out earlier today to Trump supporters, basically saying, "I am one of you," but she said, "I need you to hear me." Quote, "The election was not stolen. We lost." Mick Mulvaney, the former chief of staff here, tweeting out, "The president's tweet is not enough. He can stop this now and needs to do exactly that. Tell these folks to go home." We also saw tweets from Kellyanne Conway, a former top advisor here, as well as members of the president's family, who essentially urged the people who were storming the Capitol to be peaceful and to stand down, to go home. So that was the counter messaging that we were hearing from President Trump, these very clear messages to those who were storming the Capitol, and this very mixed messaging that we were getting from President Trump. So I can tell you the effort continues here to try to get the president to speak out in a forceful way, but I don't anticipate that's going to happen tonight, Savannah. We just got what is referred to as a full lid here at the White House, which means it is almost unlikely and impossible that we would hear from President Trump, at least that we would hear him speak. And now that his Twitter account has been locked down, it's hard to see that that can happen either. And just to take a step back, I would
Twitter has locked down the president's account for 12 hours.
Throngs of supporters here at the nation's capital, reiterating those false claims of fraud and trying to apply pressure to Vice President Mike Pence to get him to block the election results that were going to be read today on Capitol Hill, something that he cannot do, something that Pence was quite clear today he does not have the authority to do.
And Kristen, it's Lester. As you talk about these calls for the president to be more forceful in his condemnation of all this, who is he listening to right now? We know he's been out around a group that have been encouraging him to continue to fight the election, but is there anyone in his immediate orbit who might be pointing him in that direction?
Well, we know that among the people he has spoken to today and who have been advising him most closely, his chief of staff, of course, Mark Meadows, and then his family members, Ivanka Trump, one of the people who he listens to most closely, Jared Kushner, another one. And so we know that he has been speaking with these people, but the question is, will he listen to his family members? Will he listen to his top aides? And so far he has not. So far he has, again, put forward this very mixed messaging, reiterated some of his very heated rhetoric, and at the same time trying to urge peace, saying that we're the party of law and order. So will he listen? That remains to be seen. I can tell you, Lester, that heading into today, there was a real effort to try to get the president to view today and what was supposed to happen on Capitol Hill, which was the reading of the Electoral College votes and then the declaration of President-elect Joe Biden as the next president of the United States. The president's aides and allies were trying to get him to see this day as really his last stand. It's the last airing of his grievances. One person telling me privately, look, we understand this process and we understand the reality. Joe Biden's going to be the next president. And so there is an effort behind the scenes here to get the president to, if he's not going to concede publicly, at least to accept that and to try to move forward with his next steps. What will that look like? He has talked about a potential run for himself in 2024, but it's just not clear what his next steps are, what his off-ramp is here at the White House.
All right, Kristen, thanks very much. We've seen these pictures of people occupying some of these offices, and shocking as they may be, as I pointed out earlier, there are also potential evidence. I want to bring in Pete Williams right now. Pete, there have been various descriptions of how do you characterize these folks? Some have called them terrorists. The police have called them rioters. But in the eyes of the law, what kind of jeopardy are they in, these folks who stormed the Capitol?
Well, the ones who simply went into the Capitol are in jeopardy of being charged with, believe it or not, trespassing on government property. And I think that's one of the reasons why you didn't see more of an aggressive law enforcement response early on to try to arrest people. The law enforcement people were simply way outnumbered, and to stop and make arrests is a big consumption of manpower resources. And it may well be that the Capitol Police just said, what we need to do is get these people out of here. Let's not worry about making arrests now. Now, the folks who we've seen smashing windows, trying to break into the House floor, they face more serious charges of destruction of government property. And my guess is, in talking to the law enforcement people I've talked to tonight, the government will be going through the vast numbers of still pictures of these, the ones that we've been seeing all day, the ones that exist from Capitol security cameras as well, and trying to get those people identified and arrested. Some were wearing masks, but as you saw from the pictures earlier, many were not. So that's the kind of jeopardy they face. Now, there are also more serious things being investigated. There were 2 improvised explosive devices, homemade pipe bombs in essence. We don't know whether they were working devices or not, found outside the headquarters of the Republican and separate Democratic national committees, both of which have their offices on Capitol Hill. The RNC is right near the House office buildings. The DNC is a little further away. Those were both identified and destroyed. And then, of course, we have the most serious thing of all, the shooting of a woman who was inside the Capitol building. She died of her injuries a couple of hours later at a DC hospital. We still don't know the circumstances of the shooting. We don't know which law enforcement agency had the officer who shot her. We know it was a law enforcement shot. What we've been told is the woman was trying to climb up onto a ledge over a doorway. One congressman said she was trying to get onto the House floor. We just don't know if that was the case or not. The DC police still have not identified her, but that seems to be the most serious thing that happened today. But back to your question, Lester, surprisingly, these are not that serious charges potentially that these folks face for the most part, except for those who were the most destructive and were clearly out to do some damage.
And that will change after this incident.
Now on the line, Senator Jeff Merkley of Oregon. He's currently in a secure
The charges
location
will
with
change
other senators.
rapidly.
We're glad you're able to talk to us. We're glad you're safe. First of all, just give me your what you witnessed today from your perspective. What did you see?
And by that, I mean, what you can be charged with for doing something like this will be much more severe in the future.
When we were holding a debate with basically all the senators there listening to each other.
And even though there were no guns involved, as far as we know, this is going to impact gun ownership. Mark my word on that as well.
As to why this was absolutely outside the Constitution and inappropriate and damaging to our republic. And that debate, to have everyone present and engaged in that session, very rare moment. And then we heard a commotion outside the doors of the corridor that lead between the House and the Senate. And it's not that unusual to have a commotion. We sometimes have protesters up in the who disrupt things, who unfold banners or start shouting to disrupt the proceedings, and they'll be escorted out by the police. And so I think most of us assumed it was something like that. The balconies themselves were essentially empty because of the COVID restrictions. So perhaps there were protesters just outside, a small group being disruptive. Then an individual opened the door, ran up to the dais, asked the vice president to gavel down the session, swept him away, and obviously we knew at that moment that things were dramatically different. And we were facing some very serious threat, not just a few people who were trying to create a disruption. So that's how it began earlier today.
Well, and as night falls on the Capitol, it's our understanding that members of Congress, senators, members of the House are looking to reconvene and continue this work of certifying the electoral vote. What do you know about that? What are the plans tonight?
We are absolutely determined to get back on the Senate floor. There's a lot of discussion among the members here if we could convene here in this secure location, but I think the sense has been symbolically we want to be back on the Senate floor, complete our work tonight to show that the rioters, the hooligans who sought to disrupt the actions today have failed to do so. We will complete our work tonight.
I won't ask you where you are. I know it's a secure location, but I would love if you could tell me what it's like in that room. How many senators are there? Are you talking? Is there tension because of what's unfolded today?
There are lots of discussions between members. Much of our work here is way too segregated. Lunch times, the Republicans have Republican lunch every day. We're here. We sit on opposite sides of the committee rooms. We sit on opposite sides of the floor. There just isn't the interaction among members that there needs to be to help bridge the partisan chasm and get work done. We're really in a situation of many hours in the same room. It's very unusual. There are a lot of bipartisan discussions going on. Of course, our Republican colleagues were split on this issue of disrupting the vote today. Some of them had a very strong intention to want to support this vision of the president that they're, to say that they were with the base, which has been hearing that there were horrific systemic shenanigans that have cheated the president out of his office. And others, knowing that this was false, misleading, were very opposed to any participation in that at all. So you have a deep split in the Republican caucus. You have a very united Democratic caucus saying this is just so completely wrong. The Constitution calls upon us to witness the counting, but it does not call on us to be able to throw votes out and thereby try to deliberately send the decision to the House where Trump would have been put in office for 4 more years. This is really an attempted coup.
Is there a sense among your colleagues there on the Republican side that given the events of today and this extraordinary situation where they had to be evacuated and the work of Congress stopped, will they continue to mount the objection? Are they trying to think of a different path? Or do you think you'll convene tonight and it'll be just as it would have been, 7 hours ago?
No, it will not be the same at all. The Republican group that had objected is talking to each other. Some of them were conveying to me that they were determined that they not object to any other states, and they thought that they had most if not all the Republican senators on board for that. Obviously, takes only one senator to object to a state to send us back into deliberation on that counting that state's electoral votes. So it has to be unanimous. I suspect they will succeed. They will say any arguments we wanted to present have been presented over Arizona. And actually, the arguments under election law says a senator can object on the basis that a state's electoral votes have not been properly certified, or that the information was incorrectly presented, and then no case was made that either of these two things had happened. The case was simply this: there is a mob across America that believes what the president is saying, and we want to show we're listening to them. So we're going to disrupt this process and participate in this effort to send the decision to the House of Representatives. what I heard among this room today was senators saying, well, we didn't really mean to participate in that. We just wanted to protest to show the Trump base that we were paying attention to them. We never intended to go that far to actually try to send something to the floor. That is to send it to the House for a decision and therefore basically put Trump back in office for 4 years. In other words, destroy the will of the people, if you will. And so people are rethinking how they're framing their position, but really what we have here are Republican leaders who failed to stand up to the president and saying you're lying to the people. Instead, they often supported that notion, joined in that effort, failed to stand up when leadership demanded that people stand up.
Well, Senator, I appreciate your time. It's going to be a long one for you. We'll be watching. Keep us posted on what transpires, and thank you again. We're glad you're safe and your colleagues are safe.
Thank you very much, and take care.
Thank you.
NBC law enforcement analyst and former Seattle police chief Carmen Best, I believe, is with us. Is she with us?
I am here.
You are here. Great. Thank you so much for being with us. Watching what transpired today and thinking 2 weeks from now.
If they're bringing that bus in up there, that March bus to transport people they're going to arrest, that's a whole lot nicer bus than they've used in other areas for other transport. Let's just put it that way.
Surreal and just reprehensible. I don't think anyone could quite imagine it to be as violent as it was. Certainly, I know that other law enforcement officials who are looking at this will be ramped up, if you will, to make sure that they have sufficient resources available. And I imagine security will be extremely tight, come January 20th, given what we've seen today at the in DC here.
Let's talk about the intelligence about what this group might have done, given what was out there on social media. Does it appear that something was missed?
Well, it's easy to, very early on, it's easy to make those types of suppositions, but, I imagine there was a lot of security around, inside the facility, and when these folks showed up, I know as being a former chief, my first priority would be to make sure that we could account for all the electeds and get them out of the facility and out of harm's way, that there weren't any hostage situations. That was all of those things are potential problems that you have to account for early on, and then deal with some of the property damage and other issues and trespassing and whatnot that was occurring. So I think there'll be a very thorough review of all the responses, of how quickly people were able to respond, of the mutual aid that was able to get there and how it was handled. But I'm certain that when things began, they were very concerned about the health and the welfare of the electors inside the building.
Yeah, and at that point when things are happening, it did seem for a long time that everything was kind of left in place, people inside, people outside, and then this evening with the curfew, things began to move. Was that ultimately, did that make the most sense to bring in as much mutual aid as you described as possible before actually moving to clear the area?
Yeah, very much so. The last thing we needed to have the officers overrun because of the lack of resources. We were going to need to have as much personnel, including the National Guard, on hand to assist with the large numbers and crowds that they had. And even in those situations, we need to use some sort of less lethal munitions to help disperse the crowd and get them out of the area.
All right, listen, we thank you for sharing your expertise on this, and I think a lot of questions will be asked in the days to come, but we appreciate the insight. We want to go to NBC's Frank Thorpe now on Capitol Hill, and Frank, you were locked down for a good part of the day. When were you and the others finally allowed to leave?
We were locked down in our studios and our booths in the Capitol for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. Told that we were not allowed to leave, and also that we were to stay away from windows, try to stay away from the hallways, and to be honest, that was a good warning, because when I went into the hallways, there were rioters walking through the hallways, and they were going to the chamber. They were in the chamber. It was the video that I was shot and was airing earlier. This was a situation where it was an unprecedented situation. And I have to say, there's a level of sadness there's a level of sadness here in the Capitol from lawmakers and aides who are just surprised and shocked that this happened. They're just stunned that something like this could happen to a building that they consider to be so secure and is so important to the happenings of the U.S. government. So we were evacuated from the Capitol and brought to a secure area in the Senate office building. And that's where also senators were also housed as well. But those senators are currently headed back to the Capitol to proceed with these proceedings, to continue on with the count. So I just have to say, it's just a stunning and shocking day. And there's just a sad feeling within the Capitol, not only with lawmakers, but with aides as well.
Yeah, Frank, this the way this day was laid out, we're told typically this ceremonial counting of the electoral votes typically goes about a half hour. We knew there would be these Republican challenges today, leading to 2-hour debates for each state challenge. Even with them coming back to work tonight, will they hang on to that model? Do we have a sense of even whether the objectors might consolidate their arguments for the sake of time, or are we looking at something that could stretch easily into tomorrow morning?
So there is an indication that they could try to consolidate these injections into maybe one debate. That's currently being discussed, but we should know that very soon. I think Republicans and Democrats are very, very angry with this situation. They're upset with this situation. They don't want it to drag on any longer than it has to. And this is a situation.
We're going to go away from that for just a moment. Go back to a live stream. We'll go back as we get closer to 8 o'clock.
Right on your window.
Oh my gosh.
And then we can trade out CNN with Pelosi, Hillary, any of them.
I really didn't expect that. We'll go to another site. I wasn't anticipating that. I just went to talk for a couple of minutes, but I've seen a couple of things that were, hi Oakley girl, hi baby girl. I know you don't like days like this, do you? I've seen a couple of things that were troubling, to say the least. Okers, stop.
Like, way down on the other side over there. There's a kettle line that's been created. And then there's one here.
Kettle line has been created, so they know about kettling.
I'm not sure if there's anything else. I'm not sure if there's anything going on anywhere else in the city right now.
Yeah, they arrested them.
I heard lots of sirens just recently, but I think this is pretty well. I think it's pretty well.
I think around the Patriots.
What we're actually witnessing politically, since that's kind of my forte, we're going to be talking about security. We're going to be talking about strategies. We're going to be doing that tomorrow night. But what you're seeing is you're going to see a split in the Republican Party. How severe of a split? There will be those that line up behind Mike Pence, and there will be those that line up behind Ted Cruz. Now, Mike Pence and Mitt Romney are going to be vying for the same votes, non-Trump supporters. Now, it's going to be easier for Romney because he has opposed the president, 45th president on numerous occasions. Mike Pence has been a loyalist up until the last day or two. So what we're seeing politically is that. And that's why you're hearing so many Republicans going, oh my God, like the sky is falling, because they have had a grip on the politics for a long time. And it was all based on abortion. And they had the opportunity to make abortion illegal, but it's too big of a wedge issue. They make too much money off of it. And that's what this whole thing was about. This whole thing that Donald Trump's done has been a scam to make money. The amount of money that's come into his campaign since the election is astronomical. And he's not going to spend that on political ads. He's not going to spend that on attorneys. he's going to take that with him to Mar-a-Lago or wherever else he goes. And it's just all these people out here, they've been used, they've been scammed, they've been lied to, and hopefully they'll wake up at some point and realize what has happened to them. Because I do not doubt their sincerity. I do not doubt for a moment they believe what they believe, and they believe they're doing good. They're not, but that's what they believe. And it's going to be tough unraveling all of that. But it's going to have to be done. And again, I think today's the line in the sand day. It's a line in the sand for friends and family and social media contacts and let alone in politics itself. You know, this is going to make people realize, well, you know, I can't, you know, I just can't hang around you if you have that in your heart, if that's what you support. And it's going to stop communications. It's going to stop relationships. This day is going to be a line in the sand day is my prediction. And we have to keep communication going. We have to keep conversations happening. And gosh, it's so sad that today went the day it went because we had an excellent panel last night. And if you haven't seen it, go back and watch that episode if you would. Just real talk. Not comfortable. At times it was uncomfortable, but it was good. And I smiled during the uncomfort because it was necessary. And again, I want to thank the people that were on that panel for sharing their truth with all of us and for educating me. Each one of them taught me something. And I'm very grateful, and I hope you like that panel. Tomorrow night, I'm going to have a couple of guys on. Chris, our paramilitary, our militia, our security expert, owns his own international security company. And Mike Selinker, the game designer that we had on that when we first started talking about the possibility of all this happening so many months ago. And we're just going to talk about potentially what's to come. And I think tonight is a precursor. If tonight keeps progressing the way it is now, it remains peaceful. Nothing happens. The certification of the Electoral College is completed. That will be a step towards not actually going to war with each other. As much as I think he needs to be removed from office and needs to be removed from office immediately, if President Trump was removed from office right now, it would cause an uprising even bigger than we have. And it's just, you know, I'm just being real. Like I said, he needs to be removed. I've thought that for a long time. You know, I had a chant back in the summer, Donald Trump, lock you up, Mike Pence too, or he'd pardon you. And it never caught on, but it should have. And we may not be where we're at now. But we are where we're at now. And okay, we popped it back to CNN. That's all right. We can hold there for a few minutes. And I thank all of you. This is not the far from the biggest platform on the internet, and that's cool. This is a unique platform. We do things others don't do. We talk about things others don't talk about. And last night, hey, thank you, Rich Mitchell. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And you can just hit the button. Anybody down there that wants to help the channel out, that's always appreciated. We had a panel last night, and and we talked about things that needed to be talked about, that should be talked about, that aren't being talked about anywhere else. And we started something. And gosh, I'm so honored to have been part of that. And we're going to keep doing that. And if you're interested in coming on and sharing your truth, if you've got views you think aren't being heard, by all means, all you got to do is contact me at americandoofus@gmail.com or American Doofus on Facebook. And I'm going to look at some comments here for just a second. Tell them old buzzards, take their meds and go to bed before they catch a stroke. The Democrats are liars and thieves too. I'm not going to argue that point. I'm not going to argue that at all. Replaced by demented Joe. Joe's not going to be president very long. Joe was the acceptable alternative to Bernie. And there was an arrangement made with all the other candidates. Everybody drop out all at once and get behind Biden in order to stop Bernie. So Biden is more of a figurehead than he will be an actual long-term president. And I do think there might be, some concerns about Biden's long-term health. And I think this is we're going to see Kamala Harris, president of the United States, the first woman and the first woman of color to be president of the United States. And I think that'll probably happen within the year. I think that'll happen in 2021. Thank you, brother. Rich, you might be interested in EAR. We haven't had a chance to talk about that, but EAR is an organization that we're forming. EAR stands for End All Racism. We've got prototypes of shirts we're going to be putting out. And basically, it's an organization with got a couple of board members and a couple of advisors to the board already. And basically, it's going to be about trying to heal, trying to play a small part in healing what is going on and what has been going on, and bringing about understanding that we have so much more in common than what we let divide us, and looking at each other as human beings and not as stereotypes or not with monolithic thinking. Because, I understand why any black person or any member of a community of color, no matter, what community it is, I understand why there's mistrust in white people in general. I do understand that. I totally get that. And I get why there's anger. And, I get all of that. Not every white person does, but yet at times we're all looked at the same, and I accept that, and we're just trying to change that if we can in some small way. So I wasn't planning on talking about EAR. No, we can't play tonight. We can't play. I gotta have this up. Okay, we'll play tomorrow night. All right.
Look at this. It's getting violent outside, but
okay, our streamer is switching streams, so again, none of my favorite streamers are on, and I'm utilizing people that I'm unfamiliar with. Oh, Oakley. Oakley's trying to sit in my lap. Here. I want you to say hi to everybody watching, okay? Come here. Come here. Thank you. I love you too. Say hi to everybody. This is Oakley the doofus dog. Yeah. Oh. Okay, this is obviously a throwback, so let me see if I can find something. Again, this is showing what was going on earlier in the day.
Congresswoman, welcome to our ongoing coverage here. Can you tell us where you are?
Sure, I'm inside. Thank you for having me. I'm in space and I'm inside of one of the several office buildings that House members have. I'm in the Longworth building.
What have you heard so far?
Okay.
So I happen to be a former member of the Air Force
Again, this is old footage. I got to move back because my my phone needs charged. Again, Rich Mitchell, thank you so much for helping out the channel. It's greatly appreciated, and anybody can do that. True Trey, what's going on? Daryl Edwards, Critical Thought, Immortal River, Nile Valley. That's a great name. Universal Knowledge. Thank you all for being on here. Thank everybody for watching, those that are watching live and those that come back and watch. Okay, that was a false tweet. Oh.
As you know, Jake, we have a White House briefing room. It has lights, it has cameras, it has people ready for the President of the United States or the White House press secretary or the chief of staff at the very least to come in and call for calm. That is not happening. They're putting out tweets. That's it. That is the entirety of their response at this point, and it's just insufficient.
Okay, again, this is earlier in the day. I'm going to go to.
They seem dumbstruck. They seem shell-shocked. Looking at their faces, they just don't seem to understand what is unfolding around them. And it is astonishing. I will tell you, I've never seen anything quite like it in my 8 years covering the White House. A White House staff that appears to be immobilized, incapable of dealing with the situation. And as Galen was just saying, part of the reason why is because the president is just watching this on TV. He is now a spectator of the destruction that he has unleashed. He is not acting as a commander-in-chief anymore. He is just a television viewer-in-chief, watching all of this unfold. And it's disgraceful. It's just one of the most disgraceful things I think we're ever going to witness in our lives. Yeah. Lead of his duties about a year ago sent out this message. This is not MAGA.
We'll go back to CNN here while I find something. I'll let you have just a minute, baby girl. Go back to CNN while we find something from the live stream, I'm hoping. But again, thankful everything is appearing peaceful, and it appears like the militia did not show up. The 3%ers, those that consider themselves patriots but not part of a militia, and oath keepers. It doesn't seem like they came armed, which is a great thing. That was my concern for tonight. But again, it's only 8 o'clock. And again, once the House and Senate are both just now reconvening. And
police officers, elected representatives were attacked. He did nothing. Nothing until he was finally persuaded to put out a couple of half-hearted calls for calm, which themselves continued to incite his fight.
Okay, we lost everything. Hang with me for just a moment there. Hopefully I can get something up fairly quick. January 6th, we're going to be awaiting the certification of the Electoral College that will officially make the final step in leading to the inauguration of Joe Biden as the 46th president of the United States. I'm stalling for time because my phone is incredibly slow, and I said 6th of January because I shouldn't be out of I should not be out of a gig on the 6th of January, but my phone is running slow. Or perhaps that just does not, okay, it's not my phone, it's that app, I apologize. I'm going to jump back on to woke.net for a couple of minutes while I try to find, woke.net shows a conglomeration, a collage, if you will, of we got Denver, Colorado. We've got Washington. We got Las Vegas, and
we'll get over to the car as fast as we can.
I'm not sure what's going on in Denver or Vegas, and I hope things stay as peaceful as they are in DC.
About the process. Corporate corruption and wasteful consumption. So, all those things are all those things are important. So, we're glad you're here. We hope you're safe. The truth is coming. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. Hey, woman of the clock. Are you at the American Baptist Church up here? No, you have Colorado. Never mind. Where are you at?
No, well, I'm actually an executive director of Sober Living in Lakewood, but I'm a Unitarian Universalist minister.
Up 14th.
Well, that's my colleague, Mike Moran, is the woman.
You're still Unitarian.
You're in Universalist. We're in Lakewood.
Okay, perfect.
And I'm part of the Jefferson Unitarian Church.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah, so there's press anyway.
I'm Cut the Plastic, YouTube, independent media, and yeah, we're live. We're live.
This is better than I hoped. I really thought there may be a rush on the Capitol at 8 o'clock to try to stop the second round, and it doesn't appear that be the okay.
The Senate will come to order. Vice President, as President of the Senate, would like to give a brief statement of the indulgence of the senators. Today was a dark day in the history of the United States Capitol. But thanks to the swift efforts of U.S. Capitol Police, federal, state, and local law enforcement, the violence was quelled. The Capitol is secured, and the people's work continues. We condemn the violence that took place here in the strongest possible terms. We grieve the loss of life in these hallowed halls, as well as the injuries suffered by those who defended our Capitol today. And we will always be grateful to the men and women who stayed at their posts to defend this historic place. To those who wreaked havoc in our Capitol today, you did not win. Violence never wins. Freedom wins. And this is still the people's house. As we reconvene in this chamber, the world will again witness the resilience and strength of our democracy. Even in the wake of unprecedented violence and vandalism at this Capitol, the elected representatives of the people of the United States have assembled again on the very same day to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. So may God bless the lost, the injured, and the heroes forged on this day. May God bless all who serve here and those who protect this place. And may God bless the United States of America. Let's get back to work.
Mr. President,
the Majority Leader.
Ask unanimous consent the Majority Leader and the Democratic Leader be allowed to speak, and that the time not count against 2 hours of debate in relation to the objection raised on the state of Arizona.
Is there objection? Without objection, so ordered.
I don't know how long we'll be watching this.
The United States Senate will not be intimidated. We will not be kept out of this chamber by thugs, mobs, or threats. We will not bow to lawlessness or intimidation. We are back at our post. We will discharge our duty under the Constitution and for our nation. And we're going to do it tonight. This afternoon, Congress began the process of honoring the will of the American people and counting the Electoral College votes. We've fulfilled this solemn duty every 4 years for more than 2 centuries. Whether our nation's been at war or at peace, under all manner of threats, even during an ongoing armed rebellion and the Civil War, the clockwork of our democracy has carried on. The United States and the United States Congress have faced down much greater threats than the unhinged crowd we saw today. We've never been deterred before, and will be not deterred today. They tried to disrupt our democracy. They failed. They failed. They failed to attempt to obstruct the Congress. This failed insurrection only underscores how crucial the task before us is for our republic. Our nation was founded precisely so that the free choice of the American people is what shapes our self-government
expression of the popular will. Now, we assembled this afternoon to count our citizens' votes and to formalize their choice of the next president. Now we're going to finish exactly what we started. We'll complete the process the right way, by the book. We'll follow our precedents, our laws, and our Constitution to the letter. And we will certify the winner of the 2020 presidential election. Criminal behavior will never dominate the United States Congress. This institution is resilient. Our democratic republic is strong. The American people deserve nothing less.
Democratic leader.
Mr. President. Mr. President, it is very, very difficult to put into words what has transpired today. I have never lived through or even imagined experience like the one we have just witnessed in this Capitol. President Franklin Roosevelt set aside December 7th, 1941 as a day that will live in infamy. Unfortunately, we can now add January 6th, 2021 to that very short list of dates in American history that will live forever in infamy. This temple to democracy was desecrated. Its windows smashed, our offices vandalized. The world saw Americans' elected officials hurriedly ushered out because they were in harm's way. The House and Senate floors were places of shelter until the evacuation was ordered, leaving rioters to stalk these hallowed halls. Lawmakers and our staffs, average citizens who love their country, serve it every day, feared for their lives. I understand that one woman was shot and tragically lost her life. We mourn her and feel for her friends and family. These images were projected to the world. Foreign embassies cabled home their home capitals to report the harrowing scenes at the very heart of our democracy. This will be a stain on our country, not so easily washed away. The final, terrible, indelible legacy of the 45th President of the United States, undoubtedly our worst. I want to be very clear. Those who perform these reprehensible acts cannot be called protesters. No, these were rioters and insurrectionists, goons and thugs, domestic terrorists. They do not represent America. There were a few thousand violent extremists who tried to take over the Capitol building and attack our democracy. They must and should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, hopefully by this administration, if not, certainly by the next. They should be provided no leniency. I want to thank the many of the Capitol Hill Police and Secret Service and local police who kept us safe today and worked to clear the Capitol and return it to its rightful owners and its rightful purpose. I want to thank the leaders, Democrat and Republican, House and Senate. It was Speaker Pelosi, Leader McConnell, Leader McCarthy, and myself who came together and decided that these thugs would not succeed, that we would finish the work of that our Constitution requires us to complete in the very legislative chambers of the House and Senate that were desecrated, but we know always belong to the people, and do again tonight. But make no mistake, my friends, today's events did not happen spontaneously. The president who promoted conspiracy theories that motivated these thugs, the president who exhorted them to come to our nation's capital, egg them on. He hardly ever discourages violence and more often encourages it. This president bears a great deal of the blame. This mob was in good part President Trump's doing, incited by his words, his lies. This violence, in good part, his responsibility, his everlasting shame. Today's events certainly would not have happened without him. Now, January 6th will go down as one of the darkest days in recent American history. A final warning to our nation about the consequences of a demagogic president, the people who enable him, the captive media that parrots his lies, and the people who follow him as he attempts to push America to the brink of ruin. As we reconvene tonight, let us remember, in the end, all this mob has really accomplished is to delay our work by a few hours. We will resume our responsibilities now, and we will finish our task tonight. The House and Senate chambers will be restored good as new and ready for legislating in short order. The counting of the electoral votes is our sacred duty. Democracy's roots in this nation are deep, they're strong, and they will not be undone, ever, by a group of thugs. Democracy will triumph, as it has for centuries. So to my fellow Americans who were shocked and appalled by the images on their televisions today, and who are worried about the future of this country, let me speak to you directly. The divisions in our country clearly run deep, but we are a resilient, forward-looking, and optimistic people, and we will begin the hard work of repairing this nation tonight, because here in America, we do hard things. In America, we always overcome our challenges.
Okay, a couple of things. First of all, thank you, Carpe Diem. Seize the day.
Senator from Oklahoma.
One thing that I want to mention before I go back to this. This is where the elitism comes in. They talk about it like they're the only ones. This is the people's house. We ought to have access. The people that were there today were United States citizens. Let's not forget that. They are citizens. They're people acting wrongly, but nonetheless acting out of what they believe. And the way that both of these senators have treated it is that it's their house and nobody else's, and they have been able to do that because of terrorism, because of pandemics, and we need to take some of that back. In my opinion, some of this elitism that shows through is disgusting, and I understand why people are angry about that on both sides. So I just wanted to get that out there. I wanted to say thank you again to Carpe Diem, Reginald, Universal Knowledge, DEF CON, what's going on? Darren, everybody in the podcast. Sissy, thank you so much for all you do. You're amazing. Let's go back and hear what this senator is having to say, and I'll keep making sure everything's peaceful on the outside.
Thank you. Ronald Reagan once said, "Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the ability to handle conflict by peaceful means."
That Reagan was a genius, wasn't he?
Peaceful people in my state of Oklahoma want the questions answered, but they don't want this, what happened today. They want to do the right thing. And they also want to do it the right way. They want to honor the constitutional process, but they also want to have debate about election security because they want to make sure it's right, which is why it's an important issue that still needs to be resolved. Transparency in government just doesn't seem like a bad idea. Obviously, the commission that we have asked for is not going to happen at this point. And I understand that. And we're headed towards tonight, towards the certification of Joe Biden to be the president of the United States. We will work together in this body to be able to set a peaceful example in the days ahead. I yield the floor.
Democratic leader.
Senator from Nevada, Senator Cortez Masto.
Senator from Nevada.
Mr. Vice President, I know that this room is full of leaders of both parties who love this country, and many believe that for America to succeed, our politics must find common ground. And that has never been clearer than today, when armed rioters stormed the U.S. Capitol, emboldened by President Trump's false and inflammatory rhetoric about the 2020 elections. I believe that we in this chamber have a special duty as leaders to work together to lower the temperature of our politics. And I hope that my colleagues who have questioned the legitimacy of this election in Arizona and all of these other states now see the dire and dangerous consequences of sowing doubt and uncertainty. I also know that as U.S. senators, we all take solemnly the oath we swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. At this moment in history, I can think of nothing more patriotic than renewing our faith in the charters of freedom that our founding fathers crafted for our republic, starting with the fundamental American principle in our Declaration of Independence that governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed. The people have spoken in this election, and our only job here today is to do what they ask. It is not to argue election security. That's not the place for what we are doing today. Our Constitution specifically reserves to the people the right to meet in their respective states and vote for the president and vice president. As a result, individual states oversee and implement the election process, not the federal government. To guard against fraud or irregularities in the voting process, the states are required to have robust election security measures. Likewise, state legislatures have the opportunity to examine evidence of voter fraud before they certify their electoral college votes. And our courts, from district courts to the United States Supreme Court, adjudicate legal challenges and election disputes. All of those things happened after the 2020 election. State houses and courts across the country took allegations of voter fraud seriously and followed the constitutional process to hear challenges to this year's election. No state found evidence of any widespread voter fraud, and neither did any court ask to review the state's findings. In Arizona, Republican Governor Doug Ducey, Democratic Secretary of State Katie Hobbs, Republican Attorney General Mark Brnovich, and State Supreme Court Chief Justice Robert Rubinell all certified the results of the election on November 30th. And we know, we have heard, Arizonans have been voting by mail for almost 30 years. And Governor Ducey has expressed confidence in the state's process numerous times. In November, he said, "We do elections well here in Arizona. The system is strong, and that's why I have bragged on it so much." He further stated, "We have some of the strongest election laws in the country, laws that prioritize accountability and clearly lay out our procedures for conducting, canvassing, and even contesting the results." And they are right. Arizona has one of the most transparent election processes in the country, with built-in accountability, starting with internal auditing. We have heard unfounded allegations that voting machines in Arizona and elsewhere somehow changed vote tallies or somehow improperly rejected ballots while claiming to accept them. These allegations all ignore the fact that Arizona counties conducted ballot audits by hand to double-check the machine counts, and these audits found no widespread fraud or irregularities. Maricopa County, the county where more than 60% of the state population resides, conducted a post-election hand count audit in the week after the election, which showed perfect 100% accuracy in machine tabulations. So why would we need, my colleagues, to call for a 10-day emergency audit to be conducted by a legislative commission when it's already been done by the state of Arizona? What happened to states' rights? The audit involved checking ballots for the presidential election, but also ballots for federal and state legislative elections. The audit report shows every precinct's machine and hand count totals for each of the races audited. And for every single race in every precinct, the difference between the hand count and the machine count was 0. Maricopa's audit report stated no discrepancies were found by the hand count audit boards. Seeking to find any reason to contest these results, some of the state Republicans then tried to claim that Maricopa County failed to follow state law in conducting this audit by selecting voting center locations to audit instead of voting precincts. This was wrong. And this too went to a court. In rejecting this claim, state court in Arizona found that the county followed the properly issued guidance on hand audit procedures from the Arizona Secretary of State. And the court found that Maricopa County officials, therefore,
Army! I retired as a colonel. I was blessed to continue on in service to Donald J. Trump as his media consultant and media representative in the international Hispanic press. I went to the Pentagon where I served
this is all
as
earlier.
the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense in charge of running the Western Hemisphere. I went from that job to now becoming a citizen who's lived that American dream. That American dream.
I don't know why they would have old ones.
It's really remarkable, Savannah, and we almost never hear from the vice president without hearing him first talk about President Trump. So President Trump earlier today, just to think about how all of this began and how this day first got underway, was addressing throngs of supporters here in the nation's capital when he really slammed and pressured the vice president to take action that he doesn't have the authority to take, to try to block the results. And that is a pressure campaign that he has been waging for days now, both publicly and privately. And it's our understanding, based on reports, that Pence has made it quite clear to him privately that he doesn't have the authority to take the type of actions that the president wants him to take. The president, of course, through his remarks earlier today, through his series of tweets, has reiterated his false claims of widespread voter fraud. And that is something that, remarkably, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell knocked down earlier today when those initial proceedings first began. So we're seeing this break with some of the president's most loyal supporters. And the president, he's increasingly isolated. Here we have a top official with the First Lady's office resigning, and rumblings that we could see more people out the door as they are increasingly frustrated that the president hasn't been more forceful in his statements today, Savannah.
All right, Kristen, thank you. Let's go to Chuck Todd, political director, moderator of Meet the Press. Chuck, I'm sure you've been doing reporting as well. We saw Senator Langford essentially say it's over as far as he's concerned. These objections that were going to be raised to the Electoral College vote, he was not going to see them any further, and that the Senate would vote to certify tonight. It left that open question whether there was buy-in from all Republicans in the Senate, most notably Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz, with the ringleaders of this effort. What do you hear?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, if you recall, we had this discussion, and I said, I've basically heard from everybody except those two. And I think that it sounds like that's what Casey's running into here. I think those two in particular haven't decided what to do. But, you know, Rand Paul had told another reporter about a half hour ago that it was his understanding that this was going to come to a fairly quick conclusion. And he thought that maybe 30 to 40 minutes of debate, and that's it. So the fact is, it does feel as if this is a plane. They're trying to land this plane. They're trying to do it sooner. But look, until we hear from Hawley and Cruz, I think we're all we're all waiting to see if Langford is speaking for all or just himself.
Yeah, I'm starting to wonder if January 20th can't come soon enough now for Republicans after this day.
Oh, I think you're 100% right. I mean, it's funny, when this day began, we began asking ourselves, okay, there's a real divide in the party, and Senate Republicans are trying to pick a side. Are you in the Trump wing, or are you in the non-Trump wing? There's a lot of people who don't want to be associated with the Trump wing today and tonight. Now, is that a tonight phenomenon, or is this the beginning of a true sort of massive mainstream Republican shift away from Donald Trump? Again, we've been here before. Whether it was, I remember the first time when a lot of people thought this is it for Donald Trump, the politician, is when he attacked John McCain. So, he has enough popularity, and those guys have enough political ambition. Some of those, particularly those House Republicans, that I don't know if there will be this as clean of a break, perhaps, as some of the leadership of the Republican Party would like. But this does sort of make him harder to be a part of the mainstream of the GOP, at least the establishment wing of the GOP.
What did you make of Vice President Pence not mentioning the president in his remarks? As Savannah pointed out, that's normally one of the things he neatly does.
It usually, it's the second sentence, and I know I speak for the president, right? He almost says it that way, and the fact that he didn't look, he's looking for, he made his separation comment today. He announced what he was going to do, and there's some indication that it was that moment that sort of President Trump lost his mind on this in some form, and then went out there and started, railing during that speech, and never really stopped talking. Look, it's a moment that now leads you to wonder if there is, there's impeachment and there's the 25th Amendment. There's quite a few people who are worried that the current president of the United States is too erratic to handle the next 13 days. You wonder if the 25th Amendment has gone through the mind of Vice President Pence. The fact that it did once certainly says something.
Yeah, so to remind folks where we are, this has been a day like a play with many acts. It started out as a day in which the members of the House and Senate would meet in a joint session to basically formally count the electoral votes. They'd already been certified by the various states. As expected, Republicans objected. Their first objection happened to be with the state of Arizona, where Biden narrowly won. At that point, as prescribed by the Constitution, they had to then split into their separate chambers.
Oh my gosh, Sissy.
Debate for up to 2 hours.
Is that
what's happening right now? Is that
today?
First,
the hangman noose and the gallows?
I don't have a clock on it where they were, but basically,
I'll go back and check
that debate on Arizona alone. And as we've been watching, trying to determine if Republican senators now have all in lockstep decided to maybe take a pass on this or not, that is something we're going to have to watch play out.
Absolutely, and if Chuck's still with us, I thought it was to watch what's happened with Mitch McConnell over these last few weeks. He was reelected. He had the 2 Georgia runoffs that would determine whether or not he would stay as the leader of the Republican Party, as the leader of the Senate. Those were decided. The Democrats took those. That happened this morning. Then this vote comes on. We saw a speech from Mitch McConnell, the likes of which we had not seen before, Chuck, where he really broke with the president in a dramatic way. And then tonight, taking the podium and saying that they would not be intimidated and that the work of the Senate would go on, and that they would not in any way not discharge their duties. He said, "We will be back at our post." Talk about what Mitch McConnell's calculations are at this hour.
Well, I will say this: do not underestimate the long-term anger Mitch McConnell will and always have, I think, for Donald Trump. Because I was talking to somebody fairly close to him in the last couple of days, and they were telling me he was looking forward. He was, in a weird way, he was looking forward to President Biden and being a Senate Republican leader with Biden, because it gave him, he was the leader of the party, and he's still going to be a leader of the party, even in the minority. He's still going to be an extraordinarily powerful congressional leader and still the person Joe Biden might have to go through every now and then to get deals done. But here was somebody that was going to be a president who respected the institution of the Senate. So there was, McConnell was sort of almost looking forward to everything that he was doing. And then he lost, and it's all on Trump. I mean, those Georgia Senate races are, Donald Trump created the conditions to make it much harder for those Republicans to win. There's other tactical mistakes. I think the two Republican candidates, I think David Perdue made a huge mistake joining himself at the hip and then running as a pair. She had much.
I got to pop this down here for just a second and show you a picture that I was sent. Hopefully you're going to be able to see this. Oh, I'll be able to, hold on.